Question 1. The efficiency study reveals potential areas for cost reduction within Tenaga Nasional's operational processes. Considering the company's obligations as a regulated utility in Malaysia, which of the following actions best reflects a responsible and compliant approach to addressing these findings? Option A. Implement all cost-saving recommendations from the study immediately to maximize financial benefits. Option B. Prioritize recommendations that involve workforce reduction to achieve the quickest cost savings. Option C. Disregard the study's findings as they may conflict with established operational procedures. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of each recommendation, assessing its alignment with Tenaga Nasional's strategic objectives, regulatory compliance, and potential impact on service quality and customer satisfaction. Correct answer is A. Implement all cost-saving recommendations from the study immediately to maximize financial benefits. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Tenaga Nasional, as a public utility, has a significant responsibility to its stakeholders, including customers, regulators, and shareholders. Balancing the need for operational efficiency with the imperative to maintain service quality and adhere to regulatory standards requires careful judgment. The efficiency study's findings, if acted upon without proper consideration of all stakeholder impacts and regulatory compliance, could lead to unintended negative consequences. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the efficiency study's recommendations, prioritizing those that align with Tenaga Nasional's strategic objectives, and, crucially, comply with all relevant Malaysian energy sector regulations and guidelines. This approach is right because it demonstrates a commitment to responsible corporate governance and regulatory adherence. Specifically, it ensures that any proposed changes, such as workforce adjustments or operational streamlining, do not compromise the reliability and safety of the electricity supply, which is a core regulatory requirement for Tenaga Nasional. Furthermore, it respects the interests of employees and customers by ensuring that efficiency gains do not lead to a decline in service standards or an increase in costs that are not justifiable under regulatory frameworks. This aligns with the principles of good corporate citizenship and the specific mandates governing utility operations in Malaysia. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement cost-saving measures suggested by the study without a thorough regulatory impact assessment. This fails to acknowledge the stringent regulatory oversight of the energy sector in Malaysia, which often dictates service levels, pricing, and operational standards. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on immediate cost reductions, potentially overlooking long-term implications for infrastructure maintenance or customer service, which could lead to future regulatory penalties or reputational damage. A third incorrect approach would be to dismiss the study entirely without proper evaluation, missing potential opportunities for genuine efficiency improvements that could benefit the company and its customers, and potentially falling short of regulatory expectations for continuous improvement. Professionals at Tenaga Nasional should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the full scope of the efficiency study's findings. This should be followed by a detailed assessment of each recommendation against Tenaga Nasional's strategic goals, operational capabilities, and most importantly, the prevailing regulatory framework in Malaysia. Engaging relevant internal departments, e.g., operations, finance, legal, human resources, and potentially seeking external expert advice is crucial. A formal impact assessment, considering financial, operational, customer, and regulatory implications, should precede any decision. Prioritizing recommendations that offer clear benefits while demonstrably meeting or exceeding regulatory requirements and ethical standards is paramount. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that a procurement officer at Tenaga Nasional Berhad (TNB) has a close personal relationship with the owner of a company bidding for a significant contract. The procurement officer is aware of this relationship and its potential to influence their judgment. What is the most appropriate course of action for the procurement officer to ensure compliance with Tenaga Nasional's ethical standards and relevant Malaysian regulations? Option A. Inform the supplier friend about the internal evaluation process and any competitive bids to help them strengthen their proposal. Option B. Proceed with evaluating the bid as usual, assuming personal relationships do not inherently compromise professional judgment, and avoid mentioning the relationship to anyone. Option C. discreetly favor the bid from the known supplier, believing the relationship will not be discovered and that it might lead to a more favorable outcome for TNB. Option D. Proactively disclose the relationship to the relevant internal authorities and seek guidance on recusal or appropriate handling of the bid, strictly adhering to TNB's Code of Conduct and Procurement Guidelines. The correct answer is D. Proactively disclose the relationship to the relevant internal authorities and seek guidance on recusal or appropriate handling of the bid, strictly adhering to TNB's Code of Conduct and Procurement Guidelines. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, as a public utility and a significant national entity, operates under a stringent regulatory environment that prioritizes public interest, safety, and fair competition. Decisions made by TNB personnel have far-reaching implications for consumers, the environment, and the national economy. The challenge lies in balancing operational efficiency and profitability with regulatory compliance and ethical conduct, particularly when dealing with potential conflicts of interest or situations that could be perceived as unfair advantage. Careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align with the specific laws and guidelines governing TNB's operations in Malaysia. The correct approach involves proactively seeking clarification and adhering strictly to the Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, Code of Conduct and relevant Malaysian regulatory guidelines concerning procurement and fair business practices. This demonstrates a commitment to transparency, integrity, and compliance. By engaging with the appropriate internal departments or regulatory bodies for guidance, TNB personnel ensure that decisions are made within the established legal and ethical framework, preventing potential breaches and safeguarding the company's reputation. This approach prioritizes adherence to the specific regulatory framework applicable to TNB, which is paramount in a highly regulated industry. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the procurement without seeking clarification or disclosing the relationship with the supplier is ethically unsound and likely violates TNB's Code of Conduct and potentially Malaysian competition laws. This creates a significant risk of perceived or actual conflict of interest, undermining fair competition and potentially leading to preferential treatment. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to influence the procurement process based on the personal relationship, constitutes a severe ethical lapse and a direct violation of integrity principles, potentially leading to legal repercussions and reputational damage for TNB. Finally, ignoring the potential conflict and assuming it is not an issue demonstrates a lack of due diligence and disregard for established ethical standards and regulatory expectations, leaving TNB vulnerable to scrutiny and sanctions. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves identifying the potential ethical and regulatory issues, understanding the relevant internal policies, like TNB's Code of Conduct, and external regulations, Malaysian laws governing utilities and procurement, consulting with supervisors or legal/compliance departments, and documenting all decisions and justifications. The guiding principle should always be to act with integrity, transparency, and in the best interest of Tenaga Nasional Berhad and its stakeholders, while strictly adhering to the applicable regulatory framework. Question 3. Upon reviewing the proposed infrastructure upgrade for a critical transmission line in a sensitive ecological zone, Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, faces uncertainty regarding the precise environmental compliance requirements stipulated by Malaysian law. To ensure the project proceeds ethically and legally, which of the following actions best reflects a responsible and compliant approach for TNB? Option A. Postpone the infrastructure upgrade indefinitely until all potential environmental regulatory ambiguities are fully resolved through extensive external research. Option B. Prioritize the speed of the upgrade by implementing measures that appear sufficient without formal verification from regulatory bodies. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive consultation process with the Energy Commission, Suruhanjaya Tenaga, to seek explicit guidance on environmental regulations applicable to the upgrade. Option D. Proceed with the upgrade based on internal environmental impact assessments, assuming current practices meet all regulatory standards. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the upgrade based on internal environmental impact assessments, assuming current practices meet all regulatory standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, as a public utility company, operates under a strict regulatory environment in Malaysia. Decisions made regarding its operations and stakeholder engagement must align with the Electricity Supply Act 1990, ESA 1990, and its subsidiary regulations, as well as the principles of good corporate governance and ethical conduct expected of a listed entity. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational needs with long-term sustainability and regulatory compliance, particularly when dealing with diverse stakeholder interests. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with the relevant regulatory bodies, such as the Energy Commission, Suruhanjaya Tenaga, to seek clarification and guidance on the interpretation and application of environmental regulations concerning the proposed infrastructure upgrade. This demonstrates a commitment to compliance, transparency, and responsible corporate citizenship. It allows TNB to understand the precise legal requirements, potential environmental impacts, and mitigation strategies that are acceptable to the regulator. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance, potential penalties, and reputational damage, aligning with the overarching objectives of the ESA 1990 to ensure a safe, reliable, and environmentally sound electricity supply. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the upgrade based solely on internal assessments, without consulting the Energy Commission. This risks misinterpreting or overlooking critical regulatory requirements, potentially leading to environmental damage, operational disruptions, and significant fines or sanctions under the ESA 1990. Another incorrect approach would be to delay the upgrade indefinitely due to uncertainty about environmental regulations. This could compromise the reliability and efficiency of the electricity supply, which is a core responsibility of TNB and could also be viewed unfavorably by regulators and the public. Finally, attempting to circumvent or downplay environmental concerns to expedite the project would be a severe ethical and regulatory breach, undermining public trust and TNB's commitment to sustainable practices. Professionals in such situations should adopt a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and its potential impact on operations, stakeholders, and regulatory standing. 2. Thoroughly researching all applicable laws, regulations, and guidelines, specifically referencing the ESA 1990 and any relevant environmental legislation in Malaysia. 3. Consulting with internal legal and compliance departments. 4. Proactively engaging with the relevant regulatory authorities for clarification and guidance. 5. Evaluating potential solutions against regulatory requirements, ethical principles, and business objectives. 6. Documenting all decisions and communications. Question 4. Strategic planning requires Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, to evaluate potential new energy infrastructure projects. Considering the company's commitment to sustainable development and its regulatory obligations in Malaysia, which of the following approaches best guides the selection of these projects? Option A. Invest in projects that offer the quickest path to market dominance, even if they involve significant environmental risks that can be managed through future mitigation efforts. Option B. Prioritize projects with the highest projected short-term financial returns, assuming regulatory compliance is a given. Option C. Select projects that demonstrably contribute to environmental sustainability and community well-being, alongside financial viability, in line with TNB's ESG framework and Malaysian regulatory expectations. Option D. Focus on projects that enhance TNB's public image and media presence, regardless of their underlying environmental or social impact. The correct answer is B. Prioritize projects with the highest projected short-term financial returns, assuming regulatory compliance is a given. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, in balancing its strategic growth objectives with its regulatory obligations and stakeholder expectations. The challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing investments that not only drive business value, but also align with the principles of sustainable development and corporate social responsibility, as mandated by relevant Malaysian regulations and industry best practices. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not solely profit-driven, but also consider the broader impact on the environment, society, and the long-term viability of the company, within its operating context. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of potential investments, considering their alignment with TNB's sustainability framework and relevant environmental, social, and governance-esque guidelines. This approach prioritizes projects that demonstrate a clear positive impact on environmental protection, community well-being, and ethical governance, alongside financial returns. This aligns with the spirit and letter of Malaysian regulatory frameworks that encourage responsible corporate citizenship and sustainable business practices, such as those promoted by the Securities Commission, Malaysia's Corporate Governance Blueprint, and Guidelines on Sustainability Reporting. It also reflects the ethical imperative for a major utility provider to act in the best interest of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on maximizing short-term financial returns without adequate consideration for environmental or social impacts would fail to meet regulatory expectations for responsible investment and could lead to reputational damage and potential penalties. Similarly, an approach that prioritizes public perception over substantive ESG improvements, or one that neglects the long-term sustainability of the business by overlooking emerging environmental risks, would be professionally unsound and ethically questionable. These approaches would likely contravene the principles of good corporate governance and sustainable business operations that are increasingly embedded in Malaysian corporate law and regulatory guidance. Professionals at TNB should employ a decision-making framework that integrates financial analysis with robust ESG risk and opportunity assessments. This involves engaging with diverse stakeholders, conducting thorough due diligence on the environmental and social implications of proposed investments, and ensuring transparency in reporting. The framework should prioritize decisions that create long-term value for the company and society, adhering to all applicable Malaysian laws and ethical standards. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal an unexpected and significant discharge of a potentially hazardous substance from a Tenaga Nasional power generation facility into a nearby water source. The discharge appears to be linked to a recent equipment malfunction during routine maintenance. Which of the following is the most appropriate immediate course of action for Tenaga Nasional to take? Option A. Immediately halt operations at the affected section of the facility, secure the area, notify relevant environmental and safety authorities, and initiate a comprehensive, independent investigation into the cause and extent of the discharge. Option B. Temporarily suspend operations in the affected area, but delay formal notification to authorities until the full scope of the problem and its potential impact are definitively determined internally. Option C. Continue operations at a reduced capacity while an internal team assesses the situation, with a view to rectifying the equipment malfunction and minimizing production downtime. Option D. Immediately implement temporary containment measures for the discharge and focus on repairing the faulty equipment before formally reporting the incident to regulatory bodies. The correct answer is A. Immediately halt operations at the affected section of the facility, secure the area, notify relevant environmental and safety authorities, and initiate a comprehensive, independent investigation into the cause and extent of the discharge. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Tenaga Nasional employees due to the inherent conflict between maintaining operational efficiency and upholding stringent safety and environmental standards. The need to balance immediate production demands with long-term regulatory compliance and stakeholder trust requires careful judgment. The correct approach involves prioritizing immediate cessation of operations in the affected area and initiating a thorough, independent investigation. This aligns with Tenaga Nasional's commitment to regulatory compliance and its duty of care to employees, the public, and the environment. Specifically, this approach adheres to the principles of responsible corporate conduct and the spirit of Malaysian environmental and occupational safety regulations, which mandate prompt action in response to potential hazards and a commitment to transparency in incident reporting and resolution. It also reflects best practices in corporate governance, ensuring accountability and proactive risk management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on minimizing immediate production disruption without a comprehensive investigation risks violating regulatory requirements for incident reporting and remediation. This could lead to further environmental damage, potential harm to individuals, and significant reputational damage for Tenaga Nasional. Another incorrect approach, which involves attempting to conceal or downplay the incident, is ethically reprehensible and directly contravenes principles of corporate integrity and transparency. Such actions not only expose Tenaga Nasional to severe legal penalties and fines, but also erode trust among stakeholders, including investors, customers, and the public. A third incorrect approach, which relies on internal, non-independent assessments without involving external expertise, may fail to identify the root cause of the issue or implement effective long-term solutions, thereby perpetuating the risk and potentially leading to future incidents. Professionals at Tenaga Nasional should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the potential risks and regulatory implications of any operational deviation. This should be followed by an assessment of immediate safety and environmental impacts. The framework should then guide the selection of actions that prioritize compliance, safety, and transparency, even if these actions incur short-term costs or operational delays. Engaging relevant internal departments, e.g., safety, legal, environmental, and where necessary, external regulatory bodies and experts, is crucial for a robust and defensible response. Question 6. Examination of the data shows that a Tenaga Nasional power plant's operational logs indicate a potential, albeit unconfirmed, exceedance of emission limits for a specific pollutant, which could have environmental implications. As an employee who has observed this anomaly, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to uphold Tenaga Nasional's commitment to regulatory compliance and environmental responsibility? Option A. Immediately report the observed anomaly through Tenaga Nasional's established internal reporting channels for environmental compliance and to the relevant Malaysian regulatory authorities. Option B. Delay reporting the anomaly until further operational data can be collected to definitively confirm the exceedance, to avoid unnecessary alarm. Option C. Contact an environmental advocacy group or the media directly to inform them of the potential issue. Option D. Attempt to adjust operational parameters discreetly to bring emissions within perceived acceptable levels without formal reporting. The correct answer is A. Immediately report the observed anomaly through Tenaga Nasional's established internal reporting channels for environmental compliance and to the relevant Malaysian regulatory authorities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Tenaga Nasional employee due to the inherent conflict between immediate operational needs and the long-term sustainability and regulatory compliance of the company. The employee must exercise careful judgment to balance these competing demands, ensuring that decisions align with Tenaga Nasional's commitment to responsible energy generation and environmental stewardship, as mandated by Malaysian regulations. The correct approach involves prioritizing the immediate reporting of the potential environmental breach to the relevant internal departments and regulatory bodies. This demonstrates a commitment to transparency, accountability, and proactive risk management. By adhering to established reporting protocols, the employee ensures that Tenaga Nasional can promptly investigate, mitigate, and rectify the situation, thereby minimizing potential environmental damage and avoiding regulatory penalties. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and environmental responsibility expected of a major utility provider in Malaysia, such as the Environmental Quality Act 1974. Incorrect approach that involves delaying the report or attempting to conceal the issue is professionally unacceptable. This failure to report a potential environmental breach directly contravenes regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. Such actions can lead to significant environmental harm, reputational damage for Tenaga Nasional, and severe legal consequences for both the individual employee and the company under Malaysian environmental law. Furthermore, attempting to manage the situation internally without proper reporting undermines the integrity of Tenaga Nasional's compliance framework and erodes stakeholder trust. Another incorrect approach, that of directly contacting external media without following internal reporting channels, bypasses established procedures and can lead to misinformation and uncontrolled public perception. While transparency is important, it must be managed through appropriate channels to ensure accuracy and prevent undue panic or misrepresentation of facts. This approach disregards the company's internal communication protocols and the established mechanisms for engaging with regulatory bodies, potentially jeopardizing Tenaga Nasional's ability to respond effectively and professionally to the situation. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of Tenaga Nasional's internal policies and relevant Malaysian environmental regulations. Employees should be trained to identify potential compliance issues and know the precise steps for reporting them. The framework involves 1. Recognizing the potential issue, 2. Consulting internal policies and relevant regulations, 3. Reporting the issue through the designated internal channels, e.g., Environmental Compliance Department, Legal Department, 4. Cooperating fully with internal investigations and regulatory inquiries. 5. Ensuring all actions are documented. Question 7. Assessment of how a Tenaga Nasional procurement officer should respond when a long-standing, critical supplier, facing internal restructuring, pressures for an immediate contract renewal without adhering to the standard competitive bidding process, citing potential disruptions to essential services if not accommodated. Option A. Politely decline the supplier's request for immediate renewal and inform them that the contract will not be renewed, advising them to seek new business opportunities elsewhere. Option B. Agree to the supplier's terms for immediate renewal, but stipulate that the formal contract will be amended later to reflect the agreed-upon terms, thereby satisfying the supplier's immediate need. Option C. Immediately initiate the contract renewal process as requested by the supplier to avoid service disruptions, bypassing the standard competitive bidding process due to the supplier's critical nature and past performance. Option D. Inform the supplier that while their concerns are understood, all contract renewals must strictly follow Tenaga Nasional's established procurement policies and regulatory guidelines, and initiate the standard competitive bidding process, while exploring interim measures to mitigate immediate service risks. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate the contract renewal process as requested by the supplier to avoid service disruptions, bypassing the standard competitive bidding process due to the supplier's critical nature and past performance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Tenaga Nasional employee due to the inherent conflict between maintaining positive stakeholder relationships and adhering to strict regulatory compliance. The need to balance the immediate demands of a key supplier with the long-term implications of regulatory adherence requires careful judgment and a robust understanding of Tenaga Nasional's operational framework and relevant Malaysian regulations governing procurement and ethical conduct. The correct approach involves prioritizing transparent communication and adherence to established procurement policies, even when faced with pressure from a significant supplier. This aligns with Tenaga Nasional's commitment to good corporate governance and ethical business practices, as mandated by Malaysian laws and internal guidelines. Specifically, it upholds principles of fairness, transparency, and accountability in all dealings, ensuring that procurement decisions are based on merit and compliance rather than undue influence. This approach safeguards Tenaga Nasional from potential regulatory breaches, reputational damage, and future disputes. An incorrect approach that involves expediting the contract renewal without proper due diligence or adherence to standard tendering procedures would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the established checks and balances designed to ensure fair competition and value for money, potentially violating procurement regulations and Tenaga Nasional's own internal policies. Such an action could be construed as preferential treatment, undermining the integrity of the procurement process and exposing the company to risks of corruption or mismanagement. Another incorrect approach, which is to outright reject the supplier's request without any attempt at constructive dialogue or explanation, could damage a crucial long-term relationship and potentially lead to operational disruptions. While compliance is paramount, a complete lack of engagement can be professionally detrimental. However, this is less severe than directly violating procurement rules. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements and Tenaga Nasional's internal procurement policies. 2. Assessing the nature of the supplier's request and its potential impact on operations and compliance. 3. Consulting with relevant internal departments, e.g., legal, procurement, compliance, to ensure all actions are aligned with regulations and company policy. 4. Communicating transparently with the supplier, explaining the process and the reasons for any delays or requirements while upholding compliance standards. 5. Documenting all communications and decisions thoroughly. Question 8. Which approach would be most appropriate for a Tenaga Nasional project manager to adopt when faced with a situation where a critical maintenance task on electrical infrastructure is estimated to exceed the allocated budget, and the contractor proposes using a less experienced team and deferring some non-critical safety inspections to bring the cost within the budget, while assuring that all essential safety standards will still be met. Option A. Inform the contractor that the project must proceed as originally planned, regardless of the budget overrun, and instruct them to absorb the additional costs without any discussion or renegotiation. Option B. Accept the contractor's proposal to use a less experienced team and defer non-critical safety inspections, relying on their assurance that essential safety standards will be met to stay within budget. Option C. Prioritize adherence to Tenaga Nasional's established safety protocols and relevant Malaysian regulatory guidelines for electrical infrastructure maintenance, even if it means renegotiating the budget or scope with stakeholders. Option D. Proceed with the maintenance, using the contractor's proposed cost-saving measures, assuming that the contractor has sufficient expertise and will manage risks effectively without further independent verification by Tenaga Nasional. The correct answer is C. Prioritize adherence to Tenaga Nasional's established safety protocols and relevant Malaysian regulatory guidelines for electrical infrastructure maintenance, even if it means renegotiating the budget or scope with stakeholders. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge for Tenaga Nasional employees due to the inherent conflict between immediate cost-saving pressures and the long-term imperative of maintaining robust safety standards, which are paramount in the energy sector. The need to balance operational efficiency with the absolute priority of public and employee safety requires careful judgment and adherence to established regulatory frameworks. The correct approach involves prioritizing the rigorous adherence to Tenaga Nasional's established safety protocols and relevant Malaysian regulatory guidelines for electrical infrastructure maintenance. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the legal and ethical obligations to ensure the safety of the public and Tenaga Nasional's workforce. Malaysian regulations, such as those overseen by the Energy Commission, Suruhanjaya Tenaga, mandate strict safety procedures for electrical installations and maintenance to prevent accidents, electrocutions, and fires. Ethically, Tenaga Nasional has a duty of care to its stakeholders, and compromising safety for cost savings would be a severe breach of this duty, potentially leading to catastrophic consequences and significant reputational damage. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with maintenance using less experienced personnel or by deferring critical safety checks to meet the immediate budget target. This is professionally unacceptable because it directly contravenes the spirit and letter of safety regulations designed to mitigate inherent risks in the electrical industry. Such an approach would expose Tenaga Nasional to severe legal penalties, potential litigation, and a loss of public trust. Furthermore, it demonstrates a disregard for the well-being of employees and the community, which is a fundamental ethical failing. Another incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the contractor's assurance of compliance without independent verification or adherence to Tenaga Nasional's own stringent quality control and safety audit processes. This is professionally unsound as it outsources critical oversight responsibilities and fails to uphold Tenaga Nasional's ultimate accountability for the safety and quality of its operations. Regulatory frameworks often require robust internal controls and due diligence, which this approach bypasses, creating a significant risk of substandard work and safety breaches. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape, Tenaga Nasional's internal policies, and the ethical implications of each decision. Professionals must first identify the core issue, which in this case is the tension between cost and safety. They should then consult relevant regulations and internal guidelines to determine the non-negotiable safety requirements. If a proposed action risks compromising these requirements, even for perceived efficiency gains, it must be rejected or modified. Escalation to senior management or relevant safety officers should occur if there is any doubt, or if pressure is applied to bypass safety protocols. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all decisions are defensible from a regulatory, ethical, and operational safety perspective. Question 9. Implementation of a critical cybersecurity upgrade at Tenaga Nasional has been proposed to address identified vulnerabilities. However, the Finance Department is pushing for deferral due to immediate budget constraints, suggesting a phased approach over the next 2 fiscal years. The IT security team has strongly advised that the upgrade is urgent to mitigate significant risks of data breaches and service disruption. Considering Tenaga Nasional's regulatory obligations and stakeholder interests, which of the following approaches best balances these competing demands? Option A. Implement a partial cybersecurity upgrade that fits within the current year's budget, focusing on the most visible or easily demonstrable security features, and postpone the remaining components. Option B. Proceed with the full cybersecurity upgrade immediately, reallocating funds from less critical capital projects and initiating a formal review of long-term IT security budget allocation to ensure future preparedness. Option C. Defer the cybersecurity upgrade as proposed by the Finance Department, implementing only minor, immediate patches to address the most critical vulnerabilities while planning for the full upgrade in the next fiscal year. Option D. Conduct a detailed cost-benefit analysis comparing the immediate savings from deferral against the potential costs of a cyber incident, and proceed with the upgrade only if the analysis definitively proves a net financial benefit to defer. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the full cybersecurity upgrade immediately, reallocating funds from less critical capital projects and initiating a formal review of long-term IT security budget allocation to ensure future preparedness. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate cost-saving pressures and the long-term imperative of maintaining robust cybersecurity infrastructure, which is critical for Tenaga Nasional's operational integrity and customer trust. The decision-making process requires balancing financial prudence with regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility to protect sensitive data and ensure uninterrupted service delivery. The correct approach involves prioritizing the cybersecurity upgrade by allocating necessary funds, even if it means deferring less critical capital expenditures. This aligns with Tenaga Nasional's duty of care to its stakeholders, including customers, employees, and shareholders, to safeguard their information and ensure the reliability of essential services. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing critical infrastructure and data protection, mandate that organizations maintain adequate security measures to prevent breaches and operational disruptions. Ethically, failing to invest in essential security upgrades when aware of significant risks constitutes negligence and a breach of trust. An incorrect approach would be to delay the cybersecurity upgrade solely based on short-term budget constraints without a thorough risk assessment and mitigation plan. This fails to acknowledge the potential catastrophic financial and reputational damage of a cyber attack, which would far outweigh the immediate savings. Such a decision would likely violate regulatory requirements for cybersecurity resilience and demonstrate a disregard for stakeholder well-being. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a superficial or inadequate upgrade to meet a minimum compliance threshold without addressing the identified vulnerabilities comprehensively. This approach, while appearing to address the issue, leaves Tenaga Nasional exposed to significant risks and could be seen as a deliberate attempt to circumvent the spirit of regulatory requirements, potentially leading to severe penalties and loss of public confidence. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then evaluating the costs and benefits of various mitigation strategies. When critical infrastructure and sensitive data are at stake, the potential impact of a failure in cybersecurity should heavily influence resource allocation decisions, often necessitating proactive investment over reactive cost-cutting. Question 10. The audit findings indicate that certain customer data has been inadvertently exposed due to a misconfiguration in a third-party cloud service used by Tenaga Nasional for operational analytics. The audit report highlights a lack of clear data access controls and insufficient monitoring of data transfer logs. Which of the following actions best addresses these findings while adhering to Tenaga Nasional's internal governance and Malaysian regulatory requirements? Option A. Inform all employees about the potential data exposure and instruct them to be more vigilant when handling customer information without implementing specific technical controls. Option B. Proceed with existing data processing activities while scheduling a general cybersecurity awareness training session for all staff in the next quarter. Option C. Conduct a detailed risk assessment of the specific data exposure, implement immediate corrective measures to secure the misconfigured service, and review and update Tenaga Nasional's data access and monitoring policies in line with the Personal Data Protection Act 2010. Option D. Immediately revoke access for all third-party vendors and initiate a full internal review of all cloud service configurations before any further data processing occurs. The correct answer is D. Immediately revoke access for all third-party vendors and initiate a full internal review of all cloud service configurations before any further data processing occurs. Explanation: the audit findings indicate potential noncompliance with Tenaga Nasional's internal policies and relevant Malaysian regulations concerning data privacy and cybersecurity. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency and information sharing with the imperative to protect sensitive customer and company data. A hasty or incomplete response could lead to significant reputational damage, regulatory penalties, and loss of customer trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any corrective actions are both effective and compliant. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation of the audit findings, a comprehensive risk assessment of the identified vulnerabilities, and the implementation of robust data protection measures in strict adherence to Tenaga Nasional's established policies and the Personal Data Protection Act 2010, PDPA, of Malaysia. This approach prioritizes data security and regulatory compliance, ensuring that Tenaga Nasional acts responsibly and ethically in handling sensitive information. It demonstrates a commitment to safeguarding stakeholder interests and maintaining operational integrity. An incorrect approach that involves immediately sharing all audit findings with all departments without proper vetting or anonymization would fail to protect sensitive information, potentially exposing Tenaga Nasional to data breaches and violating the PDPA principles of data security and lawful processing. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the findings due to perceived minor impact, would be a direct contravention of Tenaga Nasional's internal control framework and a failure to uphold due diligence, risking future, more severe breaches and regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach, which is to only address the findings superficially without implementing systemic changes, would not rectify the underlying issues and would leave Tenaga Nasional vulnerable to repeat offenses, demonstrating a lack of commitment to continuous improvement and compliance. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the scope and implications of the audit findings. This involves consulting relevant internal policies and external regulations, specifically the PDPA in Malaysia. The next step is to conduct a detailed risk assessment to quantify the potential impact of the identified issues. Based on this assessment, a remediation plan should be developed, prioritizing actions that address the most critical risks and ensure compliance. Throughout this process, clear communication with relevant stakeholders, including legal and compliance departments, is essential. Question 11. During the evaluation of a proposed electricity tariff adjustment for Tenaga Nasional Berhad (TNB), which approach best balances the company's financial needs with its public service obligations and national energy objectives. Option A. Prioritize immediate revenue enhancement by implementing the highest possible tariff increase to cover operational costs and boost short-term profits. Option B. Conduct a thorough analysis of the tariff adjustment's impact on customer affordability, TNB's long-term financial health, and alignment with Malaysia's renewable energy transition goals, seeking a balanced outcome. Option C. Maintain current tariff rates indefinitely to ensure maximum customer satisfaction, even if it compromises TNB's ability to invest in critical infrastructure upgrades and new energy technologies. Option D. Focus solely on reducing operational expenditures through significant service cutbacks to improve the company's bottom line, regardless of customer impact. The correct answer is A. Prioritize immediate revenue enhancement by implementing the highest possible tariff increase to cover operational costs and boost short-term profits. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of Tenaga Nasional Berhad (TNB) with its long-term strategic objectives and its obligations to various stakeholders, including shareholders, customers, and the broader Malaysian economy. The decision-making process must be grounded in the regulatory framework governing utilities in Malaysia, which prioritizes service reliability, affordability, and sustainable development. A failure to consider the long-term implications of short-term financial decisions could lead to reputational damage, regulatory penalties, and ultimately, a decline in service quality. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of the proposed tariff adjustments, considering their impact on customer affordability, the financial sustainability of TNB's operations, and alignment with national energy policies. This approach prioritizes a balanced outcome that safeguards customer interests while ensuring TNB can continue to invest in infrastructure and maintain service quality. Regulatory justification stems from the Electricity Supply Act 1990 and the Energy Commission Act 2001, which mandate the Energy Commission, Suruhanjaya Tenaga, to regulate electricity tariffs to ensure fair pricing and adequate supply. Ethical considerations involve the principle of fairness to consumers and the responsibility to provide an essential service. An approach that solely focuses on maximizing short-term revenue without considering the economic impact on consumers is ethically flawed and potentially violates the spirit of regulatory oversight designed to protect public interest. This could lead to public outcry and increased regulatory scrutiny. An approach that prioritizes immediate cost-cutting without a thorough analysis of its impact on service reliability and future investment capacity risks undermining TNB's long-term viability and its ability to meet future energy demands, which is contrary to its mandate and regulatory expectations. An approach that ignores the strategic imperative of transitioning to renewable energy sources in favor of maintaining the status quo would be a failure to adapt to evolving national and global energy policies, potentially leading to future obsolescence and missed opportunities for sustainable growth. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory mandate and stakeholder expectations. This involves gathering comprehensive data, conducting thorough impact assessments, financial, social, environmental, consulting with relevant parties, including regulators and consumer groups, and evaluating options against established criteria of fairness, sustainability, and operational efficiency. The final decision should be transparent and justifiable based on these principles and regulatory requirements. Question 12. Compliance review shows that a critical component for a routine maintenance task at a Tenaga Nasional substation requires immediate replacement. The usual approved contractor is unavailable for several days. A new, smaller contractor has offered to supply and install the component within hours, claiming they are fully licensed and experienced. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Tenaga Nasional site manager to ensure regulatory compliance and operational integrity? Option A. Decline the new contractor's offer and wait for the approved contractor to become available, even if it means a prolonged period of reduced operational capacity. Option B. Engage the new contractor immediately after obtaining a verbal assurance of their licensing and experience, prioritizing the swift restoration of substation functionality. Option C. Proceed with the installation using internal Tenaga Nasional technical staff who are available, assuming they have general electrical knowledge, to avoid any delays with external contractors. Option D. Engage the new contractor only after Tenaga Nasional's procurement department has completed a full vetting process, including verification of their license, insurance, and past performance records, and the site manager has confirmed the component meets all relevant technical specifications. The correct answer is B. Engage the new contractor immediately after obtaining a verbal assurance of their licensing and experience, prioritizing the swift restoration of substation functionality. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a business imperative and regulatory compliance obligations. Tenaga Nasional, as a regulated entity, must prioritize adherence to the Electricity Supply Act 1990 and its subsidiary regulations, as well as the Tenaga Nasional Code of Conduct. The challenge lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency and cost-effectiveness with the strict requirements for safety, environmental protection, and fair competition mandated by these frameworks. A failure to do so can result in significant penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of public trust. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the Electricity Supply Act 1990, specifically sections pertaining to the licensing of contractors and the standards for electrical installations. It also requires adherence to the Tenaga Nasional Code of Conduct, which emphasizes integrity, ethical dealings, and compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. This approach prioritizes due diligence in verifying contractor credentials and ensuring that all work undertaken by Tenaga Nasional adheres to the highest safety and quality standards, thereby safeguarding public interest and fulfilling regulatory mandates. An incorrect approach that bypasses the standard contractor vetting process, even for a seemingly minor or urgent task, constitutes a direct violation of the Electricity Supply Act 1990. This act mandates that contractors performing electrical work must be properly licensed and qualified. Failing to verify these credentials exposes Tenaga Nasional to risks associated with substandard work, potential safety hazards, and non-compliance with installation standards, which can lead to accidents and legal repercussions. Furthermore, such an action could be interpreted as a breach of the Tenaga Nasional Code of Conduct, particularly clauses related to ethical business practices and upholding the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which involves accepting a contractor's self-declaration of compliance without independent verification, also falls short of regulatory requirements. While a self-declaration might be a starting point, the Electricity Supply Act 1990 and associated guidelines often necessitate documented proof of licenses, certifications, and adherence to specific technical standards. Relying solely on a self-declaration bypasses the due diligence expected of a responsible utility provider and could lead to engaging unqualified or non-compliant contractors. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment. This includes identifying the regulatory requirements applicable to the task, evaluating the potential risks of non-compliance, and determining the most appropriate course of action to mitigate those risks while adhering to legal and ethical standards. In this context, it means always prioritizing the verification of contractor qualifications and ensuring that all work meets the prescribed safety and technical standards, even if it requires a slight delay or additional administrative effort. Question 13. Performance analysis shows a consistent trend of increased energy losses in specific transmission substations within Tenaga Nasional's network over the past 2 fiscal years, impacting overall grid efficiency and potentially contributing to higher operational costs. Considering the regulatory framework governed by the Electricity Supply Act 1990 and the directives of the Energy Commission, which of the following approaches best addresses this issue? Option A. Procure and install the most advanced, state-of-the-art transformer technology available on the market for the affected substations, prioritizing technological superiority over immediate cost-benefit analysis or detailed regulatory consultation. Option B. Conduct a superficial review of the performance data and implement minor adjustments to operational procedures, without significant capital investment or formal engagement with the Energy Commission to address the observed energy losses. Option C. Implement a phased upgrade of the affected substations, transformers, and associated control systems, supported by a detailed technical justification demonstrating projected efficiency gains, and a clear plan for regulatory submission to the Energy Commission for approval of the capital expenditure. Option D. Immediately initiate a cost-cutting measure by reducing maintenance schedules for the affected substations to reallocate funds towards other immediate operational needs, assuming the current level of energy loss is within acceptable, albeit suboptimal, parameters. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased upgrade of the affected substations, transformers, and associated control systems, supported by a detailed technical justification demonstrating projected efficiency gains, and a clear plan for regulatory submission to the Energy Commission for approval of the capital expenditure. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Tenaga Nasional, as a public utility and a key national asset, operates under a stringent regulatory environment that prioritizes public interest, safety, and fair pricing. Decisions regarding infrastructure upgrades, especially those impacting operational efficiency and potentially customer costs, require a delicate balance between technological advancement, financial prudence, and adherence to regulatory mandates. The challenge lies in interpreting performance data and proposing solutions that align with Tenaga Nasional's strategic objectives while remaining compliant with the Electricity Supply Act 1990 and its subsidiary regulations, as well as the guidelines set by the Energy Commission, Suruhanjaya Tenaga. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the performance data, identifying the root causes of the inefficiencies, and proposing solutions that are not only technically sound, but also economically viable and compliant with regulatory frameworks. This includes considering the long-term impact on service reliability, customer affordability, and environmental sustainability, all of which are key considerations for Tenaga Nasional's license and operational obligations. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principles of good corporate governance and regulatory compliance. Specifically, the Electricity Supply Act 1990 mandates that Tenaga Nasional operates in a manner that ensures the safety, reliability, and affordability of electricity supply. The Energy Commission's guidelines further elaborate on performance standards and investment criteria, requiring that any proposed expenditure be demonstrably in the public interest and contribute to the efficient operation of the electricity grid. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize immediate cost savings without a thorough understanding of the underlying performance issues. This could lead to suboptimal solutions that do not address the root causes of inefficiency, potentially resulting in recurring problems and further costs down the line. Ethically, this would be a failure to act in the best long-term interest of the company and its customers. Another incorrect approach would be to propose an upgrade based solely on the latest available technology without a rigorous cost-benefit analysis or consideration of regulatory approval processes. This could lead to significant capital expenditure that is not justified by the performance improvements or may not be approved by the Energy Commission, leading to wasted resources and potential penalties. Such an approach would disregard the principles of prudent investment and regulatory oversight. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly analyze the performance data to identify specific areas of concern and their impact. Second, research and evaluate potential solutions, considering technical feasibility, economic viability, and regulatory compliance. Third, conduct a detailed cost-benefit analysis for each viable solution, projecting long-term impacts on operational efficiency, customer costs, and environmental factors. Fourth, consult relevant internal stakeholders and, where necessary, engage with the Energy Commission to ensure alignment with regulatory expectations and to obtain necessary approvals. Finally, select the solution that offers the best balance of performance improvement, cost-effectiveness, regulatory compliance, and stakeholder benefit. Question 14. Process analysis reveals that a Tenaga Nasional procurement officer has a close personal friendship with a key executive at a company that is a significant supplier and is currently bidding on a major contract. The officer is involved in the evaluation committee for this bid. What is the most appropriate course of action for the procurement officer to ensure adherence to Tenaga Nasional's ethical standards and regulatory compliance? Option A. Downplay the significance of the friendship and continue to participate in the evaluation, assuming that the other committee members will ensure fairness. Option B. Proceed with the evaluation as normal, confident that their professional judgment will not be influenced by the personal friendship. Option C. Discreetly inform the supplier executive about the situation and ask for their advice on how to proceed to avoid any perception of conflict. Option D. Immediately disclose the personal friendship to their direct supervisor and the Tenaga Nasional Compliance Department, and request to be recused from any part of the evaluation process for this specific bid. Correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the personal friendship to their direct supervisor and the Tenaga Nasional Compliance Department, and request to be recused from any part of the evaluation process for this specific bid. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Tenaga Nasional employees regarding the ethical and regulatory handling of potential conflicts of interest when engaging with suppliers. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's need for efficient procurement and strong supplier relationships with the imperative to maintain integrity and avoid any perception or reality of undue influence or preferential treatment. Adherence to Tenaga Nasional's internal policies, which are designed to align with Malaysian regulatory expectations for state-owned enterprises and good corporate governance, is paramount. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent disclosure process. This means that any employee who identifies a potential conflict of interest, such as a close personal relationship with a representative of a supplier bidding for a contract, must immediately report this to their superior and the relevant compliance department. This allows Tenaga Nasional to implement appropriate safeguards, such as recusal from decision-making processes or enhanced oversight, thereby upholding fairness and preventing any compromise of procurement integrity. This aligns with principles of good corporate governance and the ethical standards expected of employees in positions of trust, as generally mandated by Malaysian corporate law and Tenaga Nasional's own code of conduct. An incorrect approach would be to downplay or ignore the potential conflict, assuming it will not influence decisions. This failure to disclose is a direct breach of ethical obligations and potentially Tenaga Nasional's internal policies, which are designed to prevent even the appearance of impropriety. Such an action can lead to accusations of favoritism, damage Tenaga Nasional's reputation, and expose the company and the individual to regulatory scrutiny and potential penalties. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the procurement process without any disclosure, believing that personal relationships do not inherently lead to biased outcomes. While intent may be good, the absence of transparency creates a significant risk. It undermines the fairness of the competitive bidding process and can erode trust among other suppliers and stakeholders. This approach neglects the fundamental principle of maintaining an arm's-length relationship in commercial dealings, which is a cornerstone of ethical business practices and regulatory compliance. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to seek advice from the supplier directly about how to manage the conflict. This is highly inappropriate as it involves the very party with whom the conflict exists, further compromising the integrity of the situation and potentially creating an even more complex ethical and regulatory quagmire. The professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a clear understanding of Tenaga Nasional's conflict of interest policy and relevant Malaysian regulations. When a potential conflict arises, the immediate steps should be: 1. Identify the potential conflict. 2. Consult the company's policy and relevant guidelines. 3. Disclose the conflict promptly and formally to the designated authority, e.g., supervisor, compliance officer. 4. Follow the prescribed procedures for managing the conflict, which may include recusal or enhanced oversight. This structured approach ensures accountability, transparency, and adherence to ethical and regulatory standards. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that a contractor performing essential maintenance work for Tenaga Nasional has offered a senior engineer a high-value electronic gadget as a token of appreciation for the smooth completion of the project. The engineer is aware of Tenaga Nasional's internal policy on gifts and the general ethical expectations for employees in public-facing roles. What is the most appropriate course of action for the engineer to take? Option A. Accept the gift with the understanding that it signifies a strong working relationship and may lead to future collaborative opportunities. Option B. Accept the gift and report it to their immediate supervisor but keep the gift for personal use. Option C. Accept the gift and keep it, assuming it is a genuine gesture of goodwill and not intended to influence future decisions. Option D. Politely decline the gift, citing Tenaga Nasional's policy on gifts and the importance of maintaining professional impartiality. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the gift, citing Tenaga Nasional's policy on gifts and the importance of maintaining professional impartiality. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge for Tenaga Nasional employees regarding the ethical and regulatory implications of accepting gifts. The core difficulty lies in balancing professional courtesy and relationship building with the imperative to maintain integrity and avoid any perception of undue influence or corruption. Tenaga Nasional, as a major utility provider, operates under a strict regulatory environment that emphasizes transparency and accountability. Employees must navigate situations where gifts might be offered with genuine intent, but could still create conflicts of interest or violate established codes of conduct. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between acceptable tokens of appreciation and gifts that could compromise professional objectivity or violate Tenaga Nasional's policies and relevant Malaysian regulations concerning public officials and corporate ethics. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to Tenaga Nasional's internal gift policy, which is designed to align with Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission (MAC) guidelines and the principles of good corporate governance. This approach prioritizes transparency, disclosure, and the avoidance of any situation that could be construed as bribery or corruption. By refusing gifts that exceed a nominal value or by declaring and seeking approval for any accepted gift, employees uphold their ethical obligations and protect Tenaga Nasional's reputation. This aligns with the spirit of laws such as the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2009, which prohibits the offering or acceptance of gratification. An incorrect approach would be to accept a gift without considering its value or potential implications, assuming it is merely a gesture of goodwill. This failure to assess the situation against Tenaga Nasional's policy and relevant regulations creates a significant ethical breach. It could be interpreted as tacit acceptance of a bribe or an attempt to gain preferential treatment, thereby violating the principles of fairness and impartiality expected of Tenaga Nasional employees. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the gift and keep it secret, even if it exceeds the policy's limits. This deliberate concealment is a direct violation of transparency requirements and can lead to severe disciplinary action and legal consequences, as it suggests an intent to mislead or engage in corrupt practices. Finally, accepting a gift with the implicit understanding of future favors is a clear act of corruption, directly contravening anti-bribery laws and Tenaga Nasional's code of conduct. Professionals at Tenaga Nasional should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding and internalizing Tenaga Nasional's gift policy and relevant Malaysian laws. When presented with a gift, the immediate step is to assess its nature and value against these guidelines. If the gift is clearly within acceptable limits, e.g., nominal value promotional item, it may be accepted with gratitude. If the gift exceeds these limits or its acceptance could create a conflict of interest, it should be politely declined. If there is any ambiguity, or if the gift is of significant value, the employee must disclose the offer to their supervisor and follow the established procedure for reporting and potentially surrendering the gift. This proactive and transparent approach ensures compliance and safeguards personal and corporate integrity. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates potential risks associated with the implementation of a new renewable energy project for Tenaga Nasional Berhad. Which of the following approaches best addresses these identified risks? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving all relevant stakeholders, identifying potential threats, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing specific mitigation strategies with clear ownership. Option B. Focus only on the immediate operational risks, disregarding potential environmental and financial risks to expedite project completion. Option C. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to the project engineering team, relying solely on their technical expertise to identify and manage all potential issues. Option D. Prioritize cost-saving measures for the project, assuming that the identified risks are unlikely to materialize and will not significantly impact project delivery. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving all relevant stakeholders, identifying potential threats, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing specific mitigation strategies with clear ownership. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Tenaga Nasional Berhad, TNB, as a major utility provider, operates under a stringent regulatory environment that prioritizes public safety, environmental protection, and operational integrity. A governance review highlighting potential risks in a critical infrastructure project requires immediate and thorough risk assessment to prevent adverse outcomes. The challenge lies in balancing project timelines and costs with the imperative to identify, evaluate, and mitigate all significant risks effectively. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment is comprehensive, objective, and aligned with TNB's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves a systematic and multifaceted risk assessment process. This entails identifying all potential risks across technical, operational, financial, environmental, and social domains. Each identified risk must then be analyzed for its likelihood and potential impact. Subsequently, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented, with clear ownership and timelines. This approach is professionally sound and ethically mandated because it directly addresses the findings of the governance review by proactively managing potential threats to TNB's operations and stakeholders. It aligns with best practices in corporate governance and risk management, which are implicitly expected of a company like TNB operating in a regulated sector. Adhering to such a structured process ensures that decisions are informed, transparent, and defensible, minimizing the likelihood of unforeseen issues and ensuring compliance with relevant Malaysian laws and regulations pertaining to energy infrastructure and corporate responsibility. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the governance review's findings as minor or to focus solely on the immediate financial implications of implementing mitigation measures. This failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment would be a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. It would demonstrate a disregard for potential hazards, which could lead to operational disruptions, safety incidents, environmental damage, or reputational harm, all of which carry legal and financial repercussions under Malaysian law. Another incorrect approach would be to delegate the entire risk assessment to a single department without cross-functional input or independent oversight. This siloed approach risks overlooking critical interdependencies between different risk categories and may not capture the full spectrum of potential impacts. It also undermines the principle of robust governance, which necessitates a holistic and integrated view of risk. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and validating the governance review's findings. 2. Assembling a cross-functional team with relevant expertise to conduct the risk assessment. 3. Employing a recognized risk management framework, e.g., ISO 31000 principle adapted for TNB's context. 4. Documenting the entire process, including identified risks, their analysis, mitigation plans, and residual risks. 5. Establishing a clear reporting and escalation mechanism for significant risks. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating the risk assessment as the project progresses. Question 17. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual fluctuation in power output readings from a critical substation. Tenaga Nasional's operational team is considering immediate adjustments to the system to stabilize readings and maintain service, but a junior engineer has flagged this as a potential indicator of a deeper technical issue requiring a full risk assessment before any corrective actions are taken. Which approach best aligns with Tenaga Nasional's commitment to operational integrity and regulatory compliance? Option A. Rely on historical data to assume the fluctuation is a minor anomaly and continue monitoring without a formal risk assessment. Option B. Implement a temporary workaround to mask the fluctuation, scheduling a risk assessment for a later date when operational demands are less pressing. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive risk assessment process to identify the root cause of the fluctuation, evaluate potential impacts, and develop appropriate mitigation strategies before implementing any system changes. Option D. Proceed with immediate system adjustments to stabilize readings, deferring a detailed risk assessment until after service continuity is assured. The correct answer is D. Proceed with immediate system adjustments to stabilize readings, deferring a detailed risk assessment until after service continuity is assured. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Tenaga Nasional employees to balance operational efficiency with the imperative of robust risk assessment, particularly when dealing with potential system vulnerabilities. The pressure to maintain service continuity might tempt individuals to overlook or downplay identified risks, necessitating a disciplined approach grounded in regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility. Careful judgment is required to ensure that immediate operational needs do not compromise long-term safety and reliability, which are paramount in the energy sector. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and proactive risk assessment that prioritizes the identification, evaluation, and mitigation of potential threats to the monitoring system. This aligns with Tenaga Nasional's commitment to operational integrity and regulatory adherence. Specifically, it requires a systematic process of analyzing the identified anomaly, understanding its potential impact on system performance and security, and developing appropriate control measures. This proactive stance is crucial for preventing future incidents and ensuring compliance with relevant energy sector regulations that mandate robust risk management frameworks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate system functionality without a thorough risk assessment fails to address the underlying vulnerabilities. This could lead to a recurrence of the issue or the emergence of new, more severe problems, potentially violating regulatory requirements for system resilience and security. Another incorrect approach that involves superficial analysis or a quick fix without understanding the root cause neglects the principles of due diligence and professional responsibility. This can result in inadequate mitigation strategies, leaving Tenaga Nasional exposed to significant operational and reputational risks. Furthermore, an approach that delays or dismisses the risk assessment due to perceived time constraints or resource limitations demonstrates a failure to prioritize safety and compliance, which are non-negotiable in the energy industry. Such actions could lead to regulatory penalties and a breach of public trust. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the identified anomaly as a potential risk. This should trigger a structured risk assessment process involving data gathering, impact analysis, and the development of mitigation plans. The framework should emphasize adherence to Tenaga Nasional's internal policies and relevant Malaysian energy sector regulations, which typically mandate a proactive approach to risk management. When faced with competing priorities, professionals must advocate for the necessary time and resources to conduct a thorough risk assessment, ensuring that decisions are informed by a clear understanding of potential consequences and regulatory obligations. Question 18. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent, albeit minor, deviation in voltage output from a critical substation within Tenaga Nasional's network. This deviation is within the acceptable tolerance range, but has been steadily increasing over the past week. What is the most appropriate next step for the Tenaga Nasional operations team to manage this situation? Option A. Immediately schedule a full system shutdown for inspection to rule out any potential catastrophic failure. Option B. Initiate a detailed risk assessment to understand the potential causes and implications of the voltage deviation, involving relevant engineering and maintenance teams. Option C. Adjust the substation's output settings to bring the voltage back within the lower end of the acceptable range to preemptively address the trend. Option D. Continue to monitor the deviation as it is currently within acceptable operational limits and does not warrant immediate intervention. Correct answer is B. Initiate a detailed risk assessment to understand the potential causes and implications of the voltage deviation, involving relevant engineering and maintenance teams. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Tenaga Nasional personnel to balance operational efficiency with robust risk management, adhering strictly to the regulatory framework governing the Malaysian energy sector. The pressure to maintain uninterrupted power supply can sometimes lead to overlooking subtle indicators of potential issues, necessitating a proactive and thorough risk assessment approach. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the monitoring system's data, cross-referencing it with established operational parameters and potential failure modes, and then escalating for expert analysis. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and the regulatory expectations for critical infrastructure operators in Malaysia, which mandate proactive identification and mitigation of risks to ensure service reliability and public safety. Specifically, adherence to Tenaga Nasional's internal risk management policies, which are themselves shaped by Malaysian regulatory requirements such as those overseen by the Energy Commission, Suruhanjaya Tenaga, demands a systematic evaluation of any deviations from normal operating conditions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate operational adjustments without a deeper risk assessment fails to address the root cause of the anomaly. This could lead to recurring issues and potentially more severe failures, violating the regulatory duty to maintain system integrity. Another incorrect approach, which dismisses the anomaly as insignificant without proper investigation, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential systemic risks, contravening the proactive risk management obligations expected of Tenaga Nasional. Finally, an approach that involves immediate, unverified corrective actions without understanding the underlying cause can introduce new risks or exacerbate existing ones, undermining the safety and reliability standards mandated by the regulatory framework. Professionals should employ a structured risk assessment framework. This involves identifying the anomaly, analyzing its potential causes and consequences, evaluating the associated risks, and then determining appropriate mitigation strategies. This process should be iterative and informed by both technical expertise and regulatory compliance requirements. Question 19. Investigation of a potential cybersecurity vulnerability at Tenaga Nasional's critical infrastructure facilities requires a comprehensive risk assessment. Which of the following approaches best aligns with Tenaga Nasional's commitment to operational resilience and regulatory compliance? Option A. Relying exclusively on external cybersecurity consultants to conduct the assessment, without internal validation or integration of Tenaga Nasional's specific operational context. Option B. Prioritizing the assessment of risks that have historically caused minor operational disruptions, while deferring evaluation of novel, sophisticated cyber threats. Option C. focusing the assessment solely on the immediate financial implications of a potential breach, without considering the broader impact on service delivery or regulatory penalties. Option D. Conducting a broad-ranging assessment that identifies potential cyber threats, analyzes their likelihood and impact on operations, and considers mitigation strategies in line with Tenaga Nasional's risk management framework and relevant Malaysian cybersecurity guidelines. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing the assessment of risks that have historically caused minor operational disruptions, while deferring evaluation of novel, sophisticated cyber threats. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge for Tenaga Nasional employees involved in risk assessment due to the inherent complexity of identifying and evaluating potential threats to the company's operations and reputation. The need for a robust risk assessment framework is paramount, especially in a regulated industry like energy, where safety, reliability, and compliance are critical. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine risks and minor inconveniences, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to mitigate the most significant threats. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of potential risks, considering both their likelihood and potential impact. This includes identifying a broad spectrum of risks, from operational failures and cybersecurity breaches to regulatory changes and reputational damage. A thorough risk assessment should involve input from various departments and stakeholders, utilizing established methodologies to quantify and prioritize risks. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and the regulatory expectations for Tenaga Nasional to maintain operational integrity and stakeholder confidence. Adherence to internal policies and relevant Malaysian energy sector regulations, which mandate proactive risk management, is essential. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate operational disruptions would fail to address systemic or long-term risks, such as emerging environmental regulations or geopolitical instability affecting supply chains. This narrow focus could leave Tenaga Nasional vulnerable to unforeseen events. Another incorrect approach, which relies heavily on historical data without considering future trends or emerging threats, would be insufficient. The energy landscape is constantly evolving, and past performance is not always indicative of future risks. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes cost saving over thorough risk mitigation could lead to inadequate controls, increasing the likelihood and impact of potential incidents, thereby violating the company's duty of care and potentially contravening regulatory requirements for safety and reliability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of Tenaga Nasional's strategic objectives and risk appetite. This involves establishing a structured process for risk identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment. Regular review and updating of the risk assessment are crucial to adapt to changing internal and external environments. Collaboration across departments and seeking expert advice when necessary are key components of effective risk management. Question 20. Market research demonstrates a growing demand for renewable energy solutions, prompting Tenaga Nasional to consider investing in a new solar farm project. During the initial risk assessment phase, several potential approaches are being debated internally. Which of the following approaches best aligns with Tenaga Nasional's regulatory obligations and ethical responsibilities as a utility provider in Malaysia? Option A. Expedite the project timeline by fast-tracking the assessment process, focusing primarily on the technical feasibility and operational efficiency, with minimal emphasis on potential environmental or social impacts. Option B. Adopt a comprehensive risk assessment methodology that systematically identifies, analyzes, and mitigates potential technical, financial, environmental, social, and regulatory risks, ensuring alignment with Malaysian laws and Tenaga Nasional's corporate governance framework. Option C. Prioritize the approach that focuses on maximizing immediate financial returns and project profitability, assuming regulatory hurdles can be addressed as they arise. Option D. Concentrate on securing the necessary permits and approvals with minimal scrutiny of potential community concerns or long-term social implications, believing that public opposition can be managed through public relations efforts later. Correct answer is C. Prioritize the approach that focuses on maximizing immediate financial returns and project profitability, assuming regulatory hurdles can be addressed as they arise. Explanation: This scenario is professionally challenging because Tenaga Nasional, as a major utility provider, operates within a highly regulated environment where public safety, environmental protection, and financial integrity are paramount. The assessment of risks associated with a new renewable energy project requires a comprehensive understanding of these regulatory obligations and ethical considerations. A failure to adequately assess and mitigate these risks could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, operational disruptions, and potential harm to the public or the environment. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough risk assessment that integrates technical, financial, environmental, and regulatory considerations. This approach is right because it aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and the specific regulatory framework governing Tenaga Nasional's operations in Malaysia. This framework likely mandates robust risk management processes to ensure compliance with environmental laws, safety standards, and financial reporting requirements. By proactively identifying potential hazards and developing mitigation strategies, Tenaga Nasional demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible project development, thereby safeguarding its stakeholders and its operational license. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate financial returns of the project fails to acknowledge the broader regulatory and ethical responsibilities. This oversight could lead to the neglect of critical environmental impact assessments or safety protocols, potentially resulting in non-compliance with Malaysian environmental regulations and occupational safety and health laws. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough due diligence risks overlooking significant technical flaws or unforeseen operational challenges. This haste could violate Tenaga Nasional's internal operational guidelines and potentially lead to project delays, cost overruns, and safety incidents, contravening the principles of prudent project management expected under Malaysian corporate law. A third incorrect approach that disregards potential community opposition or social impact assessments ignores the social license to operate, a crucial element for infrastructure projects. This could lead to project delays due to public protests and legal challenges, potentially violating principles of corporate social responsibility and good stakeholder engagement expected of a national utility. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the project's objectives within the context of Tenaga Nasional's strategic goals and regulatory obligations. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders and their concerns, followed by a comprehensive risk identification process that covers technical, financial, environmental, social, and regulatory domains. Each identified risk should then be analyzed for its likelihood and potential impact, leading to the development of appropriate mitigation and contingency plans. Regular review and monitoring of these risks throughout the project lifecycle are essential to adapt to changing circumstances and ensure ongoing compliance and responsible operation.